Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about the Twilight Zone Season 4, Episode 17. It is called Passage on the Lady Anne. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. It's the penultimate episode of the season. I keep forgetting that we only have 18 episodes because they're all double length for Season 4. So I'm so used to them getting to like 30 plus episodes, so it's weird that we're almost done and we're only at 17. But yeah, so this episode is about a couple who are going on a honeymoon, but they're not newly married. This is kind of a save the marriage after we've sort of went downhill over the years kind of thing. It's a husband who works too much, doesn't spend a lot of time with his wife, so she insists on taking a boat instead of a plane to go to London. Or at least England. It may not have been London, it may have been somewhere else, but it was somewhere in England. So they want to take a ship across the water so that they can spend the trip actually spending time together as opposed to just being in a plane for, one day. That's the regular setup of the episode, but of course there's the Twilight Zone thing that comes into it, which is that there's something else going on. Which it's actually a lot more subdued for most of this episode until the very end kind of has a bit more of a eerie quality. But it's an episode about lots of old people, particularly old couples. Because when the young couple, the Ransoms, that's their name, when they go to this boat and they're the guy at the agency tries to talk them out of it because it's this old crappy boat, but the wife insists. And they go to the boat, and everyone who runs into them is surprised that they're coming on this trip and tries to talk them out of it. In fact, at one point early on, one of the passengers even tries to pay them off to leave the boat before it leaves. They offer them $5,000 for their tickets. And so you get this sort of sense that... I think my feeling early on was that, okay, you're trying to get rid of them because you're all on some sort of suicide pact and you don't want them to die as well because they don't know they're making that choice. So you're trying to get rid of them. That is kind of right, but it's not as dark as that. It's more... Well, as we find out through the episode, this boat used to be specifically for honeymoons and couples. And all of these old people are all on this boat again as a sort of nostalgia trip. Because it's the ship's last voyage, it's going to be decommissioned. So they're all taking this one last trip. It's all these elderly couples who are in their 70s and 80s. There's a few of them who are widowed, so they're on their own and they're quite upset throughout the course of the episode. But it's the idea that they keep telling stories of how this boat is special to them, like it really helped them blossom their romance. So you kind of get the idea that it's probably going to ultimately do that for the main couple who are being shown throughout the early stages of the episode. Probably one of the best things about the episode is how it kind of portrays their small hostilities towards each other, and they're trying to be nice in public, but the little cracks are starting to show, and it kind of all bubbles up to about a third through the episode where they actually have a fight, and they actually sort of lay out on the table everything that's wrong, that he's always working too much, and that she's this inconvenience to him. He doesn't necessarily appreciate what he has. She's kind of just this burden he has to put up with because he's actually more concerned with climbing the corporate ladder and making these big business deals and all that stuff. So what the episode's actually building up to for most of the characters is that all these old couples are on this ship, which they're it's never really stated out loud. At the end, Rod Serling just says that the ship, never arrived at its destination. It disappeared into the Twilight Zone. So it's this idea that they're all on this voyage where they're all going off together with the ship, because this is where all their happily memories are, which is fine. Well, honestly, the most interesting thing about this episode, when you realize it's about all these old people choosing to go out and on their own terms, is that when I did a little bit of digging after I watched it, and it turns out that Charles Beaumont, who wrote this episode and who has written many episodes of the show up until this point, I remember Tara told me that he died young. He had a disease and he died. When I looked into this episode, it turns out that this is actually the last episode that he wrote, or at the very least, it's the last one that he wrote that was actually made into an episode. Apparently he is credited with episodes in season 5, but he didn't actually write those ones. Ghost writers came in and developed them based on his ideas or pitches, or so he still was, he still had like a hand in the creation, but this is the last episode that was made that was actually made from his script, I believe, based on a quick bit of research. And he probably knew he was sick by this point, I imagine. So it does kind of paint, not that this is an original story, it also said this was based on something from before, but the idea that he did this episode when he probably knew he was like on his way out is kind of eerie, and kind of is this heartfelt kind of longing for wanting to go out on your own terms and wanting to set sail into the afterlife by choice with only your happy moments kind of at mind. That does give it a little bit of a nice context, because the episode itself, I would say, kind of suffers from one being a little overlong, as a lot of these episodes this season have been. I actually didn't feel that early on. I thought the first like half of the episode was very well paced, and I thought it was using its time really well to build up the discontent between the couples, sort of up to the point where they were going to have this fight. And then when they finally hear all these happy stories from these old couples around basically a lunch tea, it becomes quite bittersweet, because they're all talking about how much they love each other and how this boat and this trip before helped them really appreciate that love, and it makes the young couple quite sad, and they're having to pretend that they're still a happy couple when they've basically already decided by this point in the episode that once they'll arrive in England, they're probably just splitting up. Like, it's kind of done. That up to that point, I think it's pretty solid. I actually think when it tries to introduce the mystery part, like other than the fact that they all want them off the ship for seemingly no reasonable reason, is that the wife disappears for a little bit. They're up on the deck and she disappears, and we spend some time with the husband looking around the ship, and he's asking all the crew to look for her. Although they don't seem that fussed. They don't seem like they think there's a big deal going on here. And quite quickly, I think you get, as an audience member, you get the idea that the reason why he's being put through this, that, if the boat, because they keep, a running thing in the episode is that the old people keep correcting the couple whenever they refer to the boat as it. They keep saying, it's a she, the boat is a she, which, is a real thing. People refer to boats as if they're ladies, even the name of this boat's the Passage, it's the Lady Anne, right? So that makes sense, but they emphasize it a lot throughout the episode, and I think there's kind of an implication that there is something sentient or otherworldly about this boat, and that it does actually help like couples and solidify romances and things like that. So the whole thing we've been told about this couple is that he doesn't really appreciate that he's in a marriage, and he doesn't really, it takes his wife for granted and sees her as a burden. So he spends a little bit of time in the sort of second half of this episode being worried that she's just gone, that she's went overboard or something, like she's just disappeared. And that's all, I mean, that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but it is kind of vague, it does kind of come out of nowhere, and it's wrapped up, and this is probably the biggest problem, is that it's wrapped up far too quickly, where he just goes back to their cabin and she's there. She's just chilling, and he's already looked here, so it definitely feels like some spooky otherworldly stuff's going on, especially since she doesn't really seems to think she's been missing. She just kind of says, I've been here. So it's all, yeah, it's kind of strange, and he is so happy to see her that he starts kissing her, and it's kind of, it's like they've made up, and the marriage is maybe saved, and they've learned to appreciate each other. I think it only really works from his side, though, because he had to, like, miss her. From her perspective, it just kind of feels like she was either in a trance or no time has passed, but she seems quite happy to make up immediately, even though she wasn't worried that he was gone for any time. It felt like it was very one-sided, and it feels like it was more his story rather than hers. When she was already, she was also ready to break up. I know for the first chunk of the episode, she was the one who was trying to fix the marriage. She was trying to repair it by insisting on going this trip and doing all these other things. But by the time they have the fight, she also thinks they should break up. Like, she is at that point. So it does feel a little bit almost disregarding of her as a character to just have her also be ready to commit to the romance again without anything. Like, maybe it would have been cool to see like both sides of this, where maybe she also thought he was missing, But instead, when he comes in, it's like she just knew where she was the whole, like she'd been waiting to seduce him or something, and that felt a little weird. It's an okay episode. I think the circumstances around it and the writer definitely make it a little bit more interesting than it actually is. The end of the episode is basically all the crew who are happy spending time with the young couple and the other passengers as well, I should say. It's mostly other passengers. I keep saying crew, but it's actually mostly other passengers. They eventually hold them at gunpoint and say, you have to get off the ship. We've got a lifeboat. We've stocked it with food. We've messaged the authorities and told them your exact location. There's a tracker even on the boat. Well, not a tracker, but like it's a radio that will send out a signal to, give people an idea where they are. You'll be rescued. You'll be fine, but you can't stay on the boat. And they never really give them a proper full reason. We just, they make them leave. They get on the little lifeboat, and the ship sails off into the mist. And then Rod comes in and tells us that we've never, the boat never arrived. But the couple kind of think they know. They know where it went. It's okay. I think it's okay. I think it's actually stronger in the first half when it's doing a decent job of building up the characters. But I think when it gets to the mystery stuff and the wife being missing for a bit, it feels a little bit undercooked once it gets to that point. And depending on your taste as well, you might just see this as a overly sentimental episode about how great love and romance is, and it almost made me like, I almost wanted them to like explore the older characters a little bit more. Like, there's the one guy who's widowed and he's very upset by this, and he goes on a bit of a drunk rant at one point about how much he misses his wife. And I was like, it kind of made me think of that other episode where the old couple were considering buying younger bodies, right? And it was the struggle to afford it, and ultimately they ended up not doing it. The guy ended up, he tried to win the money in the poker game, and whatever. It was making me think of that, and it was making me almost wish that we got a little bit more of this. Like, what does this mean that his wife isn't on this voyage with him? They say that he'll see her again soon, which was another one of the little hints that, they're all going to die. Like, they're all on this voyage to go to like death willingly, which is fine, but does it mean something beyond that like some of them don't have their partners here on the boat? Like, does he feel, even like, if this boat enhances romance and manipulates the people on it to realize what they should appreciate and have in each other, and basically course correct romances that might have gone awry or just blossoming, then what does it mean to be here as an individual person? Probably nothing. It probably just means that you don't get any effect, except the fact that he probably feels stupidly lonely. But I almost thought it was maybe more interesting to explore those characters a little bit, not to necessarily take a time away from the younger characters. Admittedly, I'm saying the back half of the whole missing wife thing's a bit undercooked, so maybe if I'm giving more time to the other characters, we're taking even more time away from that. But you could have just, there was maybe a more elegant way to have them rekindle, other than just thinking they're missing. The way that all the other passengers and crew seem to think there's nothing really wrong and she'll pop up eventually does make me think that this is the sort of thing that the boat has done in the past, like to them. Like, maybe some of them were separated in the past just to make them realize how much they missed each other and stuff like that. Like, that's the impression they give by just shrugging this off and be like, no, the boat's working its magic, it's fine, she'll take care of you, your wife is okay. So yeah, which I'm okay with. Like, it was vaguely nice to see the couple a little happier towards the end when they're at the party before they get kicked off the boat. So that is something. But I think overall, I think it's a bit middling for me, because I think it maybe doesn't. It starts off fairly strong just in terms of like character rating, but I think it dwindles a bit as it goes on, and it doesn't really live up to an exciting or intriguing plot in the back half. I think maybe the other issue as well is that I feel like the conclusion to this one, not the details, but the overall idea that all these old people are on their final voyage because they're all like willingly dying or going into the afterlife, like, that feels pretty obvious from a very early stage. And I'm not saying you have to be unpredictable or you have to hit me with more of a gut punch as the episode goes on, but maybe just that it was playing or showing too much of its hand a little bit too early in the episode. Like, certainly the way they don't want the couple to come on the ship immediately makes me think, okay, they're all dying. And then as soon as they see that every passenger other than them and the crew as well are all old, it was like, okay, like I feel like I know exactly where this is going already, and we're just kind of going along to the main characters realize more of this, and yeah, so I don't know. It was an okay episode, but nothing I think that ultimately holds up all the way through. So that's my feelings on Passage on the Lady Anne. I don't think there was a next time on at the end. There's been a couple recently that haven't had the next time on, but we have IMDb, so we can look and see what the finale of season 4 is going to be. Okay, annoyingly, it doesn't have like a proper little synopsis like most of the episodes do. It's giving me like a full description of the entire episode by the looks of it, so I won't read that. It's called The Bard. It's about Julius Mimmer, a talentless but relentless self-promoting hack who dreams of becoming a successful television writer, uses a book of magic to summon William Shakespeare to write dramatic teleplays. I'm going to stop there because this keeps going for a while, so it might go into super spoilers. So I think that's enough to get a taste of what this next one is. This definitely feels like a wild premise, I will say that. If I didn't know any better, I would say that's John C. Reilly in the photograph that I'm seeing on IMDb. Obviously it's not, because he was definitely not a middle-aged man in 1963, but we'll see how next episode shapes up next time. But there you go, that's my thoughts on this Twilight Zone. I'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Why am I doing that? Patreon. Go support everything on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Also, I started reviewing Columbo monthly as a Patreon bonus / YouTube member bonus. So if you're interested in that and want to support all the content and help keep it all coming, there's another bonus you can get on top of everything else that's already over on Patreon. But thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Keep watching TV in the Twilight Zone.